A Trump administration official now says there are no immediate plans for a second summit between President Trump and Russian President Putin. Sources familiar with the matter tell CNN an expected pre-meeting between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov is also not happening. We're joined now by CNN military analyst, retired Admiral James Stavridis. He's a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander. He's also a partner at the Carlyle Group, which is an international investment firm, and he serves on the board or advises for a handful of defense-related companies. Admiral, the Ukrainian President Zelensky is putting it this way. He says Russia became less interested in diplomacy after the U.S. declined to provide Tomahawks to Ukraine. Do you think that's a correct read on this?
I do. My sense would be quite simple. Putin was concerned about the Tomahawks, picked up the phone, called Donald Trump, tried to arrange this Budapest summit, which, as was just discussed on your show, a terrible choice in a lot of different ways, symbolically, practically. But it quickly became clear, I think, to Washington that Putin was simply going to continue with his maximalist demands, that it was nothing but a delaying tactic. So, Brianna, what I hope is that we're back where we were a week ago before the Putin phone call, and that President Trump will, in fact, strongly consider sending Tomahawks to Ukraine. I hope he does. And I hope he also considers strongly further economic pressure on Moscow. Until we do that, Putin will not be serious about coming to the negotiating table.
I mean, would a summit like this just have been a waste of time?
I think that's a pretty good way to categorize it, just like the summit in Alaska ultimately became a waste of time. And, you know, in addition to wasting the valuable time of the U.S. president, I think it also gives Russia, and particularly Vladimir Putin, look at that strut, look at the smug look on his face. It gives him a platform he richly does not deserve. He's someone who has invaded his neighbors, murdered his political enemies, and is a malevolent actor in every dimension. So, yeah, it would have been a waste of time, and the side benefit to Russia of giving someone like Putin that kind of stage again, really distasteful to many.
So what should the conditions be for Trump to have a meeting with Putin in the future?
I'm all for President Trump, who is a skilled negotiator, going to meetings with Putin, but the groundwork has to be laid. And noticeably, Marco Rubio, who is developing quite a skill set as well. Look at the outcome in the Middle East, at least thus far. Send Secretary Rubio to deal with Lavrov, get the conditions right. And I think what our president should demand is freeze the front lines where they are right now, put in place a ceasefire, and let's have a negotiation about how to end the conflict. But until we put pressure on Putin, he's simply not going to be willing. Putin is not going to be willing until he sees us as serious. So bottom line, it's Teddy Roosevelt all over again. Walk softly, but carry a big stick. In this case, President Trump has a big stick, Tomahawks, economic sanctions. I think he's got the cards, the leverage. I hope he plays them.
How are you seeing the war in Ukraine right now, especially with the knowledge, this reporting that things did get testy between Zelensky and Trump at this White House meeting as they started getting into some of the specifics of ceding land to Russia?
I'll point out that the map you're showing has essentially not changed at all in about 2 years. There has been very little movement, a little bit of gains for Russia, but not much. So Russia, which has vastly larger armed forces, supposedly much more experience in combat operations from the Middle East, ought to have strikingly moved across that map. Just not happening. Why? Because we, the West, have given the Ukrainians the tools, because they have the fighting spirit, because Russia, at the end of the day, in many ways, is a broken nation that can throw resources at this problem, but not simply grind away. as long as we continue to provide the weapon systems to Ukraine. I'll close on this, Brianna. Back to the most recent meeting of President Zelensky and President Trump in the White House. At least this time he got lunch. He didn't get thrown out. They had by all accounts, a zesty conversation. But I think if you listen to what Zelensky is saying about the meeting, it was productive, not the outcome Zelensky wanted in terms of tomahawks, but the conversation continues. I, for one, consider it a better meeting than the previous one that really was broken in the White House.
Yeah, no doubt. Admiral James Stavridis, thank you so much for being with us.